So I want to take away one piece of information every time I go to a winter seminar. So, you know, obviously I know mine, but Bill has a lot of really cool things he did here. I come over to spend like 15, 20 minutes the other day with Bill to, you know, to make sure everything was working, and I was like, I left 4.5 hours later, so it just kind of got done. And, you know, we just kind of got talking about things, and he has a lot of nice tools here that I like. I like what he does with the Blast. I've been working with Bentley from Blast, who is also involved with K-Vest. I think it's a great little tool. It's inexpensive. And in the next couple of updates, they're going to do a lot of different things with it. I gave him some input of what I'd like to see, and he's agreeable to doing some of these things. I think, you know, I spend a lot of time with putting and green reading. I enjoy it. I think what Bill was saying about being somewhat skeptical is important, because there's a lot of information we've heard for years, years, and years, and I don't think it's true. I think what you need to do is you need to go out to observe. You need to take whatever information I have today. By no means take it as fact. It's fact for me, but it's not necessarily fact for you. And go out and play with it and prove it right or prove it wrong. You know, so don't trust other people's information. Because they say it doesn't mean it's true. It's just, you know, they say it. It's like listening to golf on TV. Okay? Here's the interesting thing. There's no such thing as green reading in the dictionary. So if you Google green reading, you're going to find a lot of articles about green reading, but you can't find a definition of green reading. I went to a number of different dictionary sources. It doesn't exist. The beauty of that is call it what you want to. You can't be wrong. You define it any way you want to. No one can disprove you because there's no factual information on what green reading is. You know, that's a safe thing to do. This is a quote by Dave Pelz. I think Pelz has done as much work as anybody over the years with regard to short game and putting. He's the first one to really bring it to the forefront. You know, I have all his books from, you know, going back to the 80s. I think he did a lot of good things with technology, with kite, with the multiple wedge systems, which everybody has now today. So he was quite the pioneer. And I think one of the reasons that green reading is, you know, the least taught, the least practiced, the most ignored, the most poorly executed is there aren't a lot of good systems on how to read a green. You know, everybody kind of uses their own thing, and it works or it doesn't. The thing that I find, and I spend hundreds of hours every year doing aim point. I'll do 25 to 30 private clubs. I'll do private lessons. I'll do custom schools for groups, for corporations, and no one really has a way to read a green. They have their way, but there's not a process. And I think process is really important, as Bill was talking about there. All right. This is something I find interesting. You hear it every weekend. I think the worst information you can get from anything about golf is on TV during a golf telecast. I mean, they say stuff just to say stuff because they got to fill airtime. You know, and this was talking about, you know, during the day the greens get faster, even though, you know, the grass might be growing. Now, I think greens do get faster. Kirk and I had a conversation, I think it was yesterday, about this, that, you know, greens can speed up from morning to afternoon, but when you're playing and the grass is growing, day in, day out, unless there's special conditions or, you know, your Shinnecock and the USGA is making your greens purple, as Kirk quoted, you know, they're not going to speed up. They're going to slow down. You know, the USGA, when they run their testing, they find that greens slow down anywhere from 3 to 6 inches from morning to afternoon rounds. You know, a lot of people, you know, and I threw that out there on social media, of course, and everybody agreed up until the first comment. And the thing is, you can run tests at your own clubs. You know, go out and roll, you know, with the you know, the putting devices. Go roll a ball, you know, leave it set up, and go roll it, you know, 6 hours later. Find out for yourselves. You know, I think they slow down for the most part as the day goes on. This is one from McKay, who is, you know, Bones, is Phil's caddy. As caddies go, there's probably not a more accomplished, wealthier, or veteran caddy than him. He's been with Phil forever. He was talking about Vegas and how everything breaks toward the Strip, you know, being downtown. During the Bob Hope, everything goes toward Indio. Well, that happens. I'm sure it happens because they use it and it works for them. But it happens for a reason. You know, it just doesn't happen because it's Indio or the Strip. This was something that was on Facebook recently, which I got a big kick out of. It was by an ex-tour player. Putting is an art, not a science. Hard to believe. Confidence is the key to putting. I agree to that. You have to see the ball go into the hole to be a great putter. If you use visualization, it works for you. That's fine with me. All right? But I don't know how everything can be scientifically proven in golf, you know, through TrackMan or through flight scope and some of the other devices, or through blast. So we have all the science we use, and then we get to putting, and now it's an art form. You know, to me, the Mona Lisa, that's an art form. You know, the Sistine Chapel, art form. Putting, no, don't buy it. All right, this is one of my favorites here.
Everybody has wanted to from behind the hole here, and by and large, it's been overread.
Overread. Broke the other way.
The ball even almost, it goes back the other way almost. It's
Almost.
Right at the end.
Yeah. This is a good part.
There is, because I really thought that when the ball started, I thought that was on the right line.
Every player has virtually seen it the way you saw it, Billy.
Yeah, they all misread it. You know, basically, that's exactly what happened. Right? The ball broke that way for one reason. It was higher on this side than it was on that side. And all day long, those announcers watch it and can't figure it out. You know, it's like, Brian Pearl here? He's not on TV yet. He will be. All right? Do your job. Okay? You show up at a tournament, know what you're talking about. We have gone out to a number of the groups. I dealt with Fox before they went with their open last June. Talked to them significantly about it. But do your job and find out what's going on if you're going to be up in the booth, because you know you're talking to millions of people worldwide, and it's just it kills me to listen to these announcers about, you know, it's almost a straight putt, but it went straight. Okay, whatever that means. Right? This is an interesting read. You know, I think you got to have great core strength if you're going to keep your clothing off there, right? I would not read like this if I was Coach Gregory wearing those yellow pants with that white belt scenario that he has.
I don't fit anyone.
Yeah, I see that. Right. So is that a process? Yes, it's a process. Do I like the fact that he has a process? I certainly do. Would I change that process if I were to work with him reading a green? Probably. All right. Here's something about your eyes, right? Everybody see these cards? All right. So I marked the one on the left with a with red at the top. I marked the one on the right with, you know, black at the top. You know. So when you look at those, like, does one have the appearance of being bigger than the other? What would you say? Say what? Okay. So the one with the black top looks bigger. Same size. Cards are the same size. What happens is, when your eyes pick up information, it obviously gets processed right through your brain. What happens is, when you do this here, the large curve gets compared to the small curve, and that's why it gives us the impression that one's larger than the other. You know, they're actually the same die. They're cut from the same die. You know, anybody see the arrow? Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's there. I mean, I threw this out there. People have looked at that logo for years and never saw the arrow. What's that? Where is it? All right, $20.
Oh yes, it's good.
No, the only problem is every time you see that logo, your eyes are going to go right to that arrow. But there's a lot of, you know, and so there's a lot of that stuff in advertising, if you look closely, where they embed little things there. And, you know, basically that's telling us, you know, according to the information I got, FedEx is moving ahead, it's moving forward, it's delivering your packages at an expensive rate. All right. What do you see there?
Guitar.
Mariachi band.
So what all do you see?
There's a chalice in the middle.
There's a chalice in the middle, there's one thing. There's an older woman and an older man looking at each other.
Yeah.
Right. There's two gentlemen right here. There's a lady in the doorway. So people see, you know, different things. You're going to see different things, you know, depending on your experience and so forth. So, you know, we could all look at the same thing but see different things. You know, I had somebody. I put that the FedEx thing up, and you know, late last night I get a blurb on my phone. I've been looking all day. Can you please tell me where the arrow is? It was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and goes, because I use my phone for my alarm, right? And I just looked at it, and my wife's not too happy because she hears the thing go off. And so I said, no, you just made my wife mad. Talk to you in the morning. Let me sleep on it. Right? Apex. A lot of people putt with an apex. The reason I don't like putting with the apex is by the time the ball gets there, it's below it. So it doesn't really help. The reason the ball is breaking is what? Gravity, tilted slope. Right? Ball's running across a tilted surface. The only reason the ball breaks is because it's going across a tilted surface. Ball always breaks which direction? Downhill. I mean, it's that simple. You can have a 30-foot uphill putt, but when it starts breaking, it's breaking downhill on a different plane, isn't it? It's breaking from left to right, right to left. Not a lot of choices here. So if I putt to the apex, by the time it rolls across that slope, it's always falling off, so it's going to miss low. Can I take the break out of a putt? No, we can't. You can't change the topography of the surface you're putting on. You could hit it firmer, it's still going to break. If it misses the hole, it's going to just be a much further comeback. Ian Poulter. Poulter's beautiful, right? Poulter likes to do things Poulter's way, right? And so he is somebody he tells us all the time, because he works with a couple of our guys, he tells us all the time, I'm going to take the break out of the putt. And so they say, okay, Ian, do it your way. You can't tell him that that's wrong, because he'll walk away. He doesn't like that. He has to do it his way. And a lot of tour players, men more than women, what a surprise, are that way. All right? Because what got them there is what they trust. And so they're hesitant to change. Male tour players are probably the most difficult species on earth to work with. The women are great. You ask Lydia Ko to do something, come back 6 hours later, she's doing it. She's still doing it. When does she stop? When you tell her to. She's also #1 in the world. All right? The portion of the putt that creates the most break. So here's what goes into a putt, basically, right? You have a 20-foot putt on a green, stimp running, say 10, which is typical of this area. Not overly fast, but reasonably. 90 degrees to the uphill slope, over a 3% grade. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. What we have found is the total amount of break is 38 inches. It'll break 10 inches in the last 7 feet of that putt. So putts don't break the most at the end. They actually break the most in the middle. If you divide any putt into thirds, the first third, the ball is rolling quickly. All right? So it's negating some of that break. The middle third, where it's going to break the most, as the ball slows down toward the hole, you're going to see the break because it's most affected by the slope. Keep in mind that most cups cannot be cut on a slope that's more than 4%. At the U.S. Opens, the agronomists I've talked to from various courses around the country, they're cutting their cups at 2 to 2.5% because of the speed of the green. So one of the things that we fall victim to in this area is we have a lot of slope in the greens because you have a lot of Devereaux, you have a lot of Tillinghast golf courses, you got a lot of slope. They weren't designed to run at 12s and 13s. They were designed to run at 7 and 8s. And that's just the way they are. Right? And so then we have today's market, today's membership, today's greens committee, who go in. And I was out at Old Westbury last year, and I did multiple classes with Aimpoint during the day. In every class, they were telling me, we putt off our greens. And I said, right. So, what's the problem? We said, we want to do that. And I said, well, you won't change. Old Westbury has a lot of slope in their greens, and they run them at between 11 and 12. What do you expect to do? You're not going to keep the ball on the green. A ball has to have a lack of slope to slow down, and when you put it on a slope, put a marble on a slope of 2%. Or put it on a tile floor, and it's just it'll run for a mile. It'll run as long as there's slope. So you can't marry slope and speed. They don't work. These greens weren't designed like that. The one that I like the best is when you have your tournaments, like your club championships. So all year long, your people are putting on 10s. But let's put them on a 12 and watch this. Let's see what happens here. That's going to be a lot of fun. I never understand the concept, personally. It just doesn't make any sense to me. If my members are putting on 10s all year long, let's putt on the 10. Let's have some fun. They're paying to do this. They're not getting paid to do it. All right. Ball's position to the uphill slope has an effect on the amount of break. True statement. 0 here, 0 there, right? So the uphill slope here goes from here right through, cup in the middle, right up here. So as I move around here, right, the least amount of break is going to be down here. So for us who are right-handed, that's our perfect putt, right to left uphill. Left-handed, perfect putt, left to right uphill. As I move up to 60 degrees, I increase the break. Up here between 90 degrees, which is across the slope, and 60 degrees downhill, that's my maximum break, right in here. Right? Hardest putts in the world are above the cup, either right to left, left to right. As I move to 30, I have less break. As I move back here to 0, I have again a straight aim putt. So one of the things about your green reading, you can use it in your pitching, you can use it in your chipping, you can use it in your bunker play, is if you're a right-handed player, you want to end up down here. Yeah. So if I'm playing golf and I'm trying to get up and down, and let's say the ball was out here somewhere and I'm chipping or in a bunker shot or pitching across the green, I have no chance of making that chip if I'm going to hit the shot that I want to hit. And that's the way I teach. If we're playing up and down, let's play up and down. Let's not play up, hope it goes in, and then have a 6-footer right to left or left to right downhill. That's not up and down, that's up in 2 putts. Right? And that's bogey and into the next tee. So when I'm teaching, unless it's the 17th or 18th hole in a match, and and I'm 1 down or losing, and I need a hole or a stroke, I'm not trying to make these chips, especially if I have a lot of slope in here. I find where I go up, I look at the uphill slope, I figure where that is, and then I chip and pitch accordingly. The easiest way to find the uphill slope is you just go up near the hole and stand. If I have the equal amount of weight on both feet, then I'm facing uphill. If I'm 1 foot tilted, then I'm facing downhill. Okay. Why is green reading and putting hard? Well, if you look at here, this is a topo. These are really valuable for people that can read them. What you'll notice in here, where you got 4.7 and 6, all the lines are close together. Okay. When you get out here, you see how wide this is in here. That's 8/10 of 1. And so as the topos, as the contour lines widen out, it's flatter. So this tells you where you can put, like if this green's running at a 10 or 11, then it probably can't put a flag above a 2, 2.5. So then, if you're a tour player or a competitive player and you have a topo, you can figure out where all the flags can't be, which is very valuable, right? So, because if you know where they're not going to be, you know where they're going to have to be. A lot of greens are going to have between 3 and 6 places to put a flag. So when you go out for your practice rounds, which the good tour players do, whose caddies know how to read greens and they know how to green, they're going to hit putts into those areas. And then on tour, a lot of these courses, you get the same cups, year after year.
Hey,
So
John,
the topos are helpful.
I'm sorry. How can you get those? I mean, how can you get that for your course?
There are, and I have some contacts with that. There are companies that will come in and do that, and like you buy 1,000 books or something like that. They'll do it. It's relatively inexpensive.
It's in Straka books.
Straka is one that does it.
Straka line is the best.
Straka.
So I don't know if they're the best, but they're certainly one of them. But there are a few. What did I say? Something on it? Yeah. What am I going to say? Do I think aim point's the best? I think it's a process. I think it's one of a green reading system. There are others out there, All right. Your goal in putting is simply to make what? A higher percentage from every distance than your competitors do, and stay true to your same process on every putt. Lydia Ko works with Mark Sweeney, who is the founder of Aim Point. Some weeks she putts well. Some weeks she doesn't. When she putts well, she's always going to finish in the top 5. And Mark will talk to her and say, what happened this week? She says, I just didn't putt well. Didn't feel good about my reads. Didn't feel good about my stroke. Yeah. But the thing that young lady does that's really impressive is she has a process that works, obviously. She's #1 in the world in the Roll Extra rankings. She sticks with it. She doesn't vary. She doesn't let a bad round or a bad tournament change the whole process, and she goes running to look for something else. She found out that during the course of a season, what she's doing is working. Okay, putts gained. In a couple weeks, Mark Brody, right? That'll be over at St. Andrews. Is that correct? For those of you who haven't met or been around Mark Brody, he's an amazing man. He's from Columbia. He's a professor. Did all the statistical analysis, relative to shot making on tour. And he's got a great sense of humor. He's just a fun person to be around. I've interacted with him on a number of occasions, been to his seminars. It's well worth trying to get over to St. Andrews with Greg there, because Brody's just, he just offers you the facts. Right? And I was in a seminar, and inevitably when you put 60 people in a room, somebody's going to disagree with even Mark Brody. So this one individual starts disagreeing with Mark, and Mark listens to the whole thing. And he said, "That's a very interesting viewpoint." He says, "You got a lot of good points there." And the guy says, "What do you think?" He says, "Well, you're wrong, but you got good things." He says, "The stats show you this." And he said, "I'm a stat guy, so I work off stats. If something's happening 8 times out of 10, he said, that's good for me. I'm going to go with the majority of times. Are there outliers? There's outliers for everything, but I'm not going to go for the 1 or 2 times, right? So Brody is really good. His putts gained, he was part of the group that of mathematicians, statisticians, college professors that kind of invented that. And basically, what you're doing in putts gained is you're comparing, against all the players in the field from 5 feet, where do I place? From 10 feet, from 20 feet, from 30 feet. The thing about putting is that if I go out and I have 34 or 35 putts, is that a good putting round or a bad putting round? Okay? You would think that 34 or 35 putts is bad, but if I hit all 18 greens and the closest I get is 20 feet, with and the rest of my putts are 20 to 40 feet, that's the and I don't 3-putt anything. That was a really good putting round. Was my problem putting? No. The problem was I didn't hit it close to the flag. So when you're looking at stats, you got to look at them relative to where the putt was taken from. And that's what Brody did, right? 2 putts from 50 feet is a lot better than 2 putts from 5 feet. That's what you'd expect to do. As a tour player, if you could 2-putt all your putts from 32 feet and out, you'll gain strokes on the field. And that's what I think Bill was talking about earlier, is look at the stats. PGA Tour stats, they have great stats from every distance. But you go in there and you can go back years and look at all the good putters and what they do. Tour players on average are going to make 1 out of 5 from 20 feet. All right. So if I hit all the greens, and I shoot 3 or 4 under, that's a really good putting round. All right. So it's all relative to where I'm putting from. The thing that they don't do that I think they could do better is, I know that if I'm putting below the hole, my chance of making them is better. So, I think putts gain doesn't take into where the ball was relative to the hole, it just does distance. It doesn't take into whether it's a downhill slope or an uphill slope. I don't know that they can get that sophisticated and still give you your numbers, but they've done a great job, and it's the best there is to point. Express is what I do, the aim point express read. We developed this about 3 years ago simply because our other read worked off of a book. Right, this was your book. It was very non-accepted throughout the world of golf. All right, I've been teaching it for 7 years. The reason is I had to know how much slope I'm standing on, what the angle of the ball was to the hole, what the speed of the green was, and what the angle of the ball to the uphill slope was, which is what every putt you have to know. And it was just too much information for people to process, right? And you had a handful of tour players that do it. You had a handful of good amateurs that do it. Those of us that taught it obviously would do it, right? We're in. But it was too much trouble. So, because it was too sophisticated for most people, it wasn't catching on. What happened was 2 archers came to do this, and they were talking to Mark and Rob Noel. For those of you who know Rob, he lives in Louisiana, and he's a bow and arrow kind of guy. And so he does a lot of archery and so forth. And archers have a way of using their fingers for distances and so forth, and that's how this whole thing developed. And it just kind of like all of a sudden it was like overnight, bam. All right. So what we can basically do is we can read any putt on any green anywhere in the world. And so all we need to read a putt with aim point is gravity. All right. And going forward, we're integrating other things other than the read. This year we're adding a speed, controlling speed over slopes and so forth, which is important because the thing that I see most when I do my classes, like I did over 300 students last year, the areas that I see people struggle with most are aiming the putter and controlling the speed. I do a lot of individual putting lessons. The first thing people tell me, I'm the world's worst putter. Where's Heath? I was over at Fenway last May with Heath, and he had like probably 3 groups during the day, 20, 24 people. And so it was kind of funny. In the first group, I had these 3 elderly gentlemen, each to claim to be the worst putter in the club. Right? and they're all friends, they all play together. And so I just said to him, I said, look, I said, with all due respect, 2 of you are lying. And they just kind of chuckled and said, well, he's really the worst. We're tied for second. Right? And I hear that a lot about how poorly I putt. And the first thing that I look at when somebody tells me they putt poorly is like, are you really a bad putter, or you just don't know where to aim? You know, because you could have a really good stroke mechanically, you could have a really good aim, but if you're going down the wrong street, you know, you're not going to get to your destination. You know, go down the hill here and make a left, you're not going to get to Rye, New York. You got to go straight across and up the hill and over, right, toward the sound. So the first thing I do in putting is, you know, I listen to why you're a bad putter, and I want to know why you think you're a bad putter. And then I take you out on a putting green when I'm giving putting lessons, and then the first thing I want to check is where are you aiming relative to the hole, and where should you be aiming? Is there a question? All right, our numbers to date, you know, Aimpoint's been around 14 years. Sweeney, who developed it, was a software developer for Hewlett-Packard. Lived out on Long Island at the time, back, you know, before 9/11. Wrote the software into his, you know, in his basement at night. You know, worked for Hewlett. He married 4 kids, so this was kind of like a passion of his. Why he developed Aimpoint was he was listening to the Open Championship, as the Brits like to be called. All right. And they were talking about green reading being a God-given talent. He didn't agree. He thought there was a science to it. You know, he thought it was predictable. So he started writing software. It's the only software program of its type in the world. One of the things we do every time we talk to Sweeney is ask him how his health is, because he's the only one that can operate the program. So we want Sweeney to live a long life. He could run in one cycle 300,000 golf balls. So he puts them all kind of different slopes. He puts them on different angles to the hole. He puts them on different stimps. So he has built every possible putt into a green, and then he just lets it run and see what happens. That's how he got all these results. His system can tell you how long a 20-foot putt across a slope of 3% on a stimp of 10 will take to get to the hole and go in at what speed. You know, so it's very sophisticated information. We don't need to know the ball speed. I just need to know how to get the ball in that line, and that's what Aimpoint does. So, you know, the numbers to date have been very good. It's growing because the Express in the last 3 years has helped a lot. You know, 45,000 amateurs, 5,000 juniors, a couple hundred college coaches, a couple hundred professional tour players worldwide, and worldwide there's 250 certified. Number 1 player in the world, Lydia Ko, is an Aimpointer. You know, she likes the process. Stacy Lewis, number 3 player in the world, again, likes the process. Stacy's won 10 times since adopting Aimpoint green reading. Her caddy is Travis Wilson. He also knows how to use the Aimpoint. Adam Scott started a couple of years ago. Be interesting to see where he goes now that USGA has just made another bad decision. Right? Because I'm not in favor, obviously, of the ban. I think it's ridiculous. You know, to me, Matt Kuchar's not clamping down is fine, but you know, if he clamps to his chest, it's not. So that's just my personal opinion. Why would we want to get people not to play golf? You know, we're that busy. So, but Adam has been working with the short putter all winter. Mark works with him personally. You know, Ian Poulter's beautiful. You know, Ian has to do it Ian's way. So he's on the green with Mark down in Orlando. They're hitting putts. Ian likes to run his 5-foot putts 5 feet by. And so Mark's saying, look, Ian, your capture speed, capture being for the hole to capture the ball, like Bill mentioned, the slower it's rolling, the better the chance of going in the hole. And so Mark said, I spent 5 minutes explaining the whole thing to him. He looks at me and he says, okay. He says, you got that? And he said, I got that. He hits the next few putts and he's running them 4 or 5 feet by. And so he said, Ian, he said, did you hear a word I said? He said, I heard all of it. He said, this is the way I putt. And so Mark says, so what do you want to do? He said, well, I'm fine. He says, you got to change your system. Right? You've got to change your system. And so the first thing Mark says is, I can just feel the pressure coming to my head. And he says, it's like that cartoon character where, you know, the red goes to the head and he explodes. And then I realized he's serious. So what happens is Mark gives him a different read. So if you're going to read with 3 fingers, typically if it's a 3 read, you do a 2. If it's a 2, you do a 1. Right? If it's a middle of the hole read, you go to the bottom of the hole. So he just adapted the system, and Ian likes it now. And then so they spent a couple hours doing this, and then he said, when it's all said and done, Mark says, what do you think? He says, I can use this. This works. And then Poulter looks at him and says, see, it wasn't that hard, was it? Because Poulter's not changing. That's what got him to the tour. You know, Poulter started golf as like a 2 handicap. He turned professional. I mean, he's going to do it his way, and he does it well. And he's got his own shirt line, right? Hunter Mahan, big believer in aim point. This is when he won the Barclays 2 summers ago. You know, he and his caddy use it. You know, Adam Scott was nice there. You know, he was on the magazine of golf back in May. You know, most important part of putting for me, green reading. It's a foundation. Just kind of give me an idea where I need to aim. Do I have to be exact? No. Why? Because different people are going to hit at different speeds. Right? So if I get somebody, and it's adaptable. So, you know, if you like to hit the ball firmly, like a Poulter does, we're going to take some of your read off. If you like to hit softly, we might add some read. You've all seen the video on YouTube that's been going around where the guy hits the ball from 3 different places, or from the same place but 3 different speeds. Right? So he plays different angles. So you have kind of an avenue there. You know, if you're going to take speed off, you can play more break. There's no doubt about it. The thing that I don't like about being too aggressive with a line is, what do I have coming back? Now, the thing that I teach when I'm with a player and we'll hit putts from everywhere is, what are you trying to do here? You know, what's your objective? Well, if I got a 30-footer downhill across a 4% slope, I'm trying to get it within 3 to 4 feet of the hole, below the hole. Hopefully, coming up the hill right to left. All right. Causes a putt to break. It rolls across the tilted surface. Slope. That's simple. All right. So, what are the factors that contribute to break? Slope, tilted. What else? Pardon? Speed of the green. Length of the putt.
Speed of the putt.
Indio. Kierkegaard. I don't know if I'm going to lunch with you. The speed of the putt is going to be determined by all those factors, though, isn't it? So when you take all those factors, then you're going to decide the speed you have. And the other thing is, the really big thing there is the angle to the hole, right? The more the ball is closer to being on the uphill slope, like 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock on a clock face, the less break you're going to have. The more it moves out to 3 or 9, the greater the break you're going to have. Right? So once you understand where the uphill slope is, you can go from there. All right. So you can see here. All right. So what do we know about this putt? We know the slope is probably right to left, obviously, and it gives us the appearance that it's also downhill. Okay. Putts, break, and speed are controlled by the tilt of the slope, friction, what we refer to as stimp. Less friction, lower stimp. Friction is nothing more than the ball's friction on the green that Bill had mentioned earlier. Gravity, a ball breaks only downhill. Grain, it's the direction the grass grows. That's all grain is. You don't have a lot of it, especially here in the Northeast, because of horticulture practices, growing practices. Good superintendents that know how to pull thatch out of it. And so basically, if you just look at, if I dump the bucket of water, where's it rolling? That's down grain. Sometimes people go by colors, with the sheen of the green. And then the other thing that can obviously affect it, depending on conditions, would be wind. All right, speed matters. This is what Bill was talking about. This is just the gentleman he mentioned from Italy who does the products. He's also an engineer. His name is Roberto Chiono. He has his company that Bill has the products from is called Row and Chi. He makes some aim point slope boards and stuff for me. So basically, this is if you put the center of the ball right at the edge of the hole and you gave it certain speeds. Roberto is an engineer that has government contracts. His real passion is golf, so he works on the government contracts 3 hours a day. Works on golf about 10 hours a day. Right? He loves golf. Anything golf, you can. Anytime you get hold of Roberto, all he wants to do is talk golf. So as the speed increases, you see what happens. The equator of the ball fails to get below the edge of the cup. You miss the putt. Right? So I'm big like Bill is. I like to die the ball at the hole. Gives it more chance of being captured. This is kind of interesting here. The forward roll of the ball, does it affect gravity? So that's what this one's about. Okay. This is something, again, these are little things we found out when we're working with aim point. Even though there's a forward roll to the ball, they fall at the same rate of gravity. What does that tell you? Nothing, but you can win a bar bet with it. All right? But it's just those kind of little things. And again, you know, a lot of this data is more for the instructor than the student, and we don't obviously share all this with the student. But, you know, I could putt 60 feet across the green, 30 feet across the green. The rate of gravity of fall is gonna be the same. You know, I think if you want this, I can make a URL and give it to you. You can definitely win some type of beverage of choice with that. This is something Mark fools around with. This is a time thing. He can tell you, you know, a 20-foot putt rolling downhill across a 3% slope at a 60-degree angle is going to take X amount of seconds. You know, some of the stuff that we do, some people that I teach, they like to work with time. How long do I need to keep the ball rolling? You know, do I? No, that's not me. But if that's what works for my student, I'm fine with it. You know, so you know, I want you to roll the ball, you know, four seconds to the hole. So I have these little time charts that I can go to. You know, I don't offer this stuff up because I think at some point it gets too sophisticated for people. You know, it's like, let's get a read, let's try to get it on that line. I like to keep it as simple as possible. You know, let Roberto and Mark do all the thinking. We just want to perform, right? There's a big thing out with the USGA and with the RNA, you know, two of my least favorite organizations in golf. Simply because I think they make bad decisions. You know, like talk to me before you do something. Right? So here's the ball's here. There's your straight line. You know, having gone through your process, this is your break, right? So you are not allowed to stand on your line. Okay, I think that's the dumbest rule in golf. Why would I want to stand on my line? Why would I want to depress the area of my ball is going to roll over? Right? I want to stand on Kirk's line. Right? I want to stand on Keith's line unless he's my partner. I don't want to stand on my own line. Right? So when we read aim point, you know, you're basically, if you stayed on the inside of that line, then you would not be violating the rules of golf. You know, what you'll see with some of our players is they get out there, and shorter putts, 4, 5, and 6 feet, they'll straddle the line to try to feel which way the slope's going. Okay. Some of the tools that I use, you get your brake master here. I like this for quick reads. You know, you see these little arrows here. Basically, if you're on that arrow, it's just kind of the opposite of what you think. That means that putt, if it were that arrow, is straight uphill. This one, you know, because it's reading like this, it's uphill and a slight right to left. So the arrows are just the opposite of what you think. The thing here is it reads in degrees. We read in percent. So, you know, basically the Husky level reads in, it's a digital from Home Depot, 40 bucks. It reads in percent. So basically what you have is, for every degree you have 1.7%. There's just two different ways to measure grade. Aim point reads in percent. But this I think is very, I like this because it gives me a quick thing, and then, you know, it's just like a quick reference. They're both that.
John, how do you determine where you put that on the green?
How do I determine where I put what?
The brake master.
The brake master, they tell you to put it right at your ball. Okay, so it's telling you the slope right where you are. So I like it more, obviously, closer to the hole. I think it's better. Further from the hole, I can change slopes. So I don't think it's as valuable, right? This here is the digital level. That's what I use most of the time. You know, these are discs that I use from 0 up to 6. You know, I have holes in them so I can tack them down to the green. So what I do is, like when I'm doing an aim point class, I'll put those on a green, and you'll go up and stand on them. So basically, an aim point, all I'm doing is my tilt one way or the other. So we stand at 6 feet and in, we stand right behind the ball. At outside of 6 feet, like if I have a 30-footer, I go into the middle section. So at a 30-footer, my middle section is 10 feet to 20 feet. I'll take a couple reads. I'll just walk in there and I'll stand, right? And I'll feel how much slope is going on. We have a process whereby we measure where, you know, my knee hits my shoe or how much flex I have. So when I stand there, I've done it enough in people doing classes where they get a knee flex. So if the process is I stand there like in the middle of the putt, you know, I feel my downhill leg's my right, I let that go straight, and every time I do, my uphill leg just bends a little bit. That amount of bend is a 3 or a 4 or a 5. That's my 3, 4, or 5 fingers. That's what we do. So what we're doing is we're figuring out the slope the ball's rolling over. Not bad information to have, right? This is called a putting line gate. It's similar to what Bill showed you. It's developed for aim points. So what we do is we set that up. You just aim it straight at the hole. You know, it's a protractor down in here that'll move right to left, left to right. And then you go out there and you do your read and you stand in the middle of the putt, right? You figure it's a 3% slope. Then you shift this, which will shift this piece, let's call it left to right. It'll shift this over here. So then the ball starts out there and then it'll break down to the hole. It's great for matching slope and speed. I think, you know, having done this for 7 years now, I think once you understand slope and speed, it makes you a better putter. It gives you a better sense of feel, as they say. It creates more of an art form. You know. Yes? Okay, I'm done. All right, slope board, we use those to train inside. All right. And how I got started at aim point was Keith Handler did over at Appowamus, did an aim point seminar like 7 years ago, and I think there were 3 of us, Keith included, that day. And I found it interesting because it's just a different way. It's a scientific way to read it, but you can make it common sense. Any questions? Yes.
Just quickly, what adaptations do you make for grain? Let's say you're in the Caribbean, heavy grain greens. What?
Add or subtract.
There's some formula for.
No, it's more just it's more of a feel thing. You know how hard I'm hitting the putts. You know, so if I'm down grain, it's not going to have quite as much effect as I'm into the grain. So if I'm down grain in the Caribbean, I'm going to have to hit it softer, aren't I? And if I'm into the grain, I'm going to have to hit it harder. And then if it's a 4 and the grain's running away from me, then I'm going to add or subtract 1. You know, so if I'm reading a 4, depending on where the ball is relative to the hole, I might read a 2 or I might read a 5. You know, and again, you're adapting to the situation. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate it.